I am Melissa Fisher, and here is another in the series of sharing my knowledge and experience of being in the software and quality testing profession for the last 10 years or more. Today, I'm going to talk about processing information and gathering thoughts through visual representation. I am personally a very visual learner, and I find that I process, digest, and gather my thoughts much quicker when I draw out diagrams, mind maps, and so on. There's a caveat with this that I've learned that everyone is different, and even though I'm a visual learner, you might be different. So there might be a different approach that you can take, but this is just really showing my experience of what has worked for me. The first thing I would recommend, though, is this brilliant talk by Alan Richardson called Thinking Visually in Software Testing. It was created over 13 years ago now, and I still see it so relevant and useful. So I'll put the link in the description below. Do go and check it out. It's really an absolutely brilliant talk. One of the key things that I took away from this is that we often have templates, like a test pattern template or test strategy template and so on. And we use that template and fill it out. Whereas what if we did it a different way is that we gathered our thoughts together and then communicated our thoughts in that way. So what, in my opinion, what I would do here is that I would gather my thoughts first and into a diagram, mind map, and then I would use a template to look for gaps of what I may have missed. As we can't remember everything, so these kind of guidelines are quite useful in terms of what to think about. I would also recommend Alan Richardson's book called Dear Evil Tester. This is an absolutely brilliant book, and it's filled with lots of humour, and I just really recommend going to read it. I was going through quite a challenging time professionally when I read this book, and I just kind of felt like I wasn't perhaps being listened to in the way that I wanted to be. And this kind of just changed things for me about how to think about things. And I came up with some mantras like fight the good fight and other things. But yeah, this is a really great book. So it will really make you have a good giggle. So yeah, do go and check out this book. And as it's coming up to Christmas, maybe you could share this book with one of your testing friends. What I want to share is kind of like how I go about things. So in one of my roles, I had to basically learn how the internet worked. And one of the network engineers taught me through how it worked. And then what I basically drew is a diagram to kind of digest the information and draw it out. This isn't the whole diagram. I took a little bit off. But this really kind of shows how I went about it, just understood the different elements in it. So like a CPU in your house attached to a white box in your house called an ONT/ONU. And then you've got these green boxes outside on the street called an OLT. What I found from doing this is that I really built up my credibility from really showing that I listened and I understood what was going on. And, my colleague came across as quite impressed from this. So I really recommend if someone is trying to teach you something, just go away and draw out and make sure you understand what they're talking about. I really recommend this for a lot of things, like understanding the product. You could maybe write down an outline. We'll go into that in a minute. And also like architecture, draw out the architecture. What are the different parts of your system, and draw it out and how they connect to each other. It's really so useful, and it will benefit you when you're trying to work through something later on. So the next thing I would like to recommend is this brilliant blog post by Haj Scoots. And it really talks about how you go about understanding the product and creating a product coverage outline. But really what stood out to me is this diagram and what you can do to kind of figure out how you go about create a product kind of overview, and then maybe what you would test from that. So yeah, I really recommend going to have a read of this this blog, so I'll again put that in the description. But again, what you could do is, create a little diagram yourself and then use this kind of structure later on to see what you've missed. So there's a particular sort of guideline that you can use to think about structure, time, function, operations, platform, interfaces, and data. This isn't personally how I would go about it. I'd think about quality criteria and other things, but you could use this as well. So again, it's use whatever kind of tool to help with your thinking. Like, do the thinking first and then use stuff to help you analyse your work if there's any gaps and so on. And this looks very similar to this kind of tool that a colleague introduced me to some time ago called MindMap. So I'll put this in the description as well. So yeah, I really recommend going to have a play with that so you could use that. But overall, what I've gone over is to understand the project and architecture in detail, you could use drawings. Go and have a check out of Alan Richardson's video. Really, I call it mental modelling, but it's really how you think about things and getting it down on paper. Go and have a read of the blog post, and then kind of think about the tools that you're using. It's not necessarily the fancy stuff like the test automation, security tools. It's like going back to basics, really, thinking about the pen and paper. I sometimes use PowerPoint, Paint, whatever kind of I have at my disposal, really. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what else you'd like me to cover in this series. Thank you for listening.